Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight's racing show is sponsored by RiverviewFamily.com Auto Sales. Go hit them up for all your auto sales needs. Tonight on the Josh Nolan Full Throttle Racing Show, #1 on YouTube, we have with us race car driver Brian Bell. Welcome to the show, Brian.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Well, how did you get started in racing, Brian?
So mine was a family affair. My grandfather used to take my dad to Riverside Speedway in West Memphis, Arkansas when he was a kid. And so right away, my dad was very infatuated with dirt track racing. And when he got older and got a job and got his own money, he just randomly went and bought a race car. So this was in 1974. So I wasn't born until 83, but right from the get-go, I was just at the dirt track at 2 weeks old, just grew up around it and just really obviously enjoyed it. It was a family thing. My uncle Larry and Gary. So my dad was Gary, my uncle's Larry. They both raced. I had another uncle, Robert, that helped with the car. So dirt track racing was just a family affair for us whenever I was growing up. And that was just something that I was always wanted to be a part of. And then as I got older was something that I wanted to pass forward with my family. So.
Okay. When you got behind the wheel of the race car for the first time, were you the least bit scared at all?
Not as scared as I should have been. I remember we went to I-30 Speedway and Joe Clay, the first night. So my dad raced that night, and when the races were over, they let me get in the car and go hot lap. And he said, and he was standing in the infield next to my dad, and he goes, "Boy, he sure isn't afraid of that throttle pedal, is he?" And when it was over with, my dad kind of had to talk to me and was like, "Look, when the track slows down, you've got to slow down. You're out there trying to, run wide open. When you got to learn to sort of adapt to the track." I was spinning out several times and just, not obviously not doing a very good job, but I think I wasn't nervous about driving the car. I was more nervous about competing against other people. I think that was the thing that I was probably most nervous about.
Okay. How much success have you had as a race car driver?
I mean, this is a conversation I get to have all the time with my friends that race because it's so subjective, right? So right now I'm kind of competing on a national level with the 410s, with the Outlaws and High Limit. So compared to those guys, I've had no success, right? And, we've struggled to, we do good to make the show. We haven't even had a top 10. My biggest highlight as a 410 driver was tearing the fence down at Riverside Speedway, which made national news for 48 hours. But, in my 360 career, we won a lot of races here regionally all the way. I'm in like Western Tennessee. And so from Texas all the way to Georgia, we won quite a few 360 races around here and, had a lot of success at short track nationals. And, I think we ran 5th or something back in like 2017 or something like that at short track. And that was like, that's what I say, like back when that show was still pretty stout. That was like kind of a career highlight for me. And, in our area, I've had to kind of contend with Tim Crawley and Derek Hagar and Howard Moore and, some other guys that kind of go anywhere in the nation and are successful. And to be able to outrun those guys here locally, there's something to be said for that. But like I said, it's all very subjective because it depends on who you're asking what success looks like.
Okay. When you win races, how do you celebrate your victories?
I usually try to be as humble about it as I can. So whenever we had a pretty good streak of season from about the beginning of 16 through 18. We had just a real hot streak as a team. And so when I would win a race, I kind of got in the habit of doing donuts on the front straightaway. And after I did it about, I would say 4 or 5 times, my dad told me, he was like, "Hey, look, I really don't like you cutting those donuts." And I was like, "Yeah, it's fine. we won the race. We're going to put on a show for the fans and kind of celebrate a little bit. And so I kept doing it a few more times. And then he came to me one night and he was like, all right, I'm going to let you keep doing the donuts, but if you ever tear the car up, I'm going to make you pay for it. And that was the end of the donuts. So now I just try to, we'll put it on the front straight away, say something nice to the fans and move on. But we don't have any particular celebration, fancy dinners or champagne or anything like that. You know, you win some races, you lose some races, and you just kind of take it all in stride.
What's an awesome day at the racetrack look like for you?
This is a great question because most people would say it's a win, but for me, an awesome day is when you learn something. And so you always want to leave the racetrack having learned something, right? So it doesn't wins and finishes are very circumstantial. And I almost kind of alluded to that a second ago. There's going to be nights that you're going to win races that you shouldn't have won. You didn't have the best car, you didn't make all the best decisions, but you still won the race. And then there's going to be nights where you're going to finish third or fifth and you had the best car and you made all the right decisions and things just didn't go your way, right? Everybody's seen that in racing. Oh, yeah, no, he won the race, but he didn't have the best car. So the goal needs to be that you needed to learn something. And my best nights at the racetrack is when the light bulb went off. It was like, oh, wait, like, no, I get that now. I understand that adjustment, or I understand that thought process. Working with maybe a crew chief or something that sort of paints things, you know, and what like paints the picture differently for you. And the way that they watch the race car, the way that they talk about your driving, the way that they look at the racetrack, the way they think about, you know, well, you're starting on the front row, so you need to think about clean air and you need to think about this way, or, oh, no, you're starting in the back, so you need to think differently. And when you leave those nights and you've kind of put the pieces of the puzzle together, those are the fun nights where you're like, hey, man, I really learned something that's going to help me a lot going forward forever. Because you don't win, you don't learn anything when you win, right? You win and you just think you did everything perfectly, which is just never true. But like wins don't teach you anything. And so they're fun and they're exciting and they're good for your ego, right? They make you feel good about yourself and all of the things. But when you talk about what's truly good for you as a driver, it, like I said, it's those nights where you learn something, the light bulb went off, you put the pieces together, and you've got something you can take with you for forever.
Okay, what's an awesome day at the race shop look like for you?
At the racetrack?
At the race shop.
Oh, at the race shop. Ooh. Um, I don't know specifically. One thing that I would say, like that I enjoy about a day at the race shop is that it's a family affair. And yeah, this kind of ties in, but it's like for me, racing's always been a family thing, right? Family, the racing is not something that I did individually. It's not my individual passion. It's a family and a team sport for me. So my awesome days at the race shop are when the family is together working as a team, right? So my dad's there, I'm there, my wife's there, my kid's there, and it's it makes it feel like we're all in it together, you know, which is obviously true. You don't see that watching on TV or doing a podcast just like this. You know, I'm the driver and I've got the spotlight and all of that. But anybody that's familiar with racing and been around it, and certainly anybody that's participated, you know, it takes the whole crew. And so that's one thing that I would say is a wonderful day at the race shop, is the day where you all feel together as a team, you know, trying to work towards a goal.
Okay, what's the story behind your racing number?
So for whatever reason, my dad ran number 32, and he just, I don't know if he saw a car that he liked or whatever it was, but he just got latched onto the number 32. When I started racing, the appropriate thing to do is go one number down, right? So if your dad ran 32, you run 31. If your big brother ran 20, well, here's a great example, like the Howards. Dale ran 47, Jan ran 46, Josh ran 45. That's a local reference for people around here. Well, when I started racing, the number 31 was taken by multiple drivers in the region. So I just flipped it and just turned it into 23.
Okay. Who do you have for sponsors on your racing team?
So the primary sponsor is, of course, the company that we own, FSR Racing Products. So we do aluminum radiators. So that's definitely the biggest contributor to the opportunity that we have as a race team. You know, as any race team, the list goes on with people that help. Steve Estelle has Estelle Truck Repair over in Little Rock, Arkansas. He helps us out a lot. Kistler Race Engines plays a big role, Maxim Race Cars, Vortex Wings, those kinds of people contribute and help with knowledge and opportunity and, all of those kinds of things. And it's a really, long list of people with any race team that, as sponsors or people that contribute or help, it goes, there's a lot of people in there.
Okay. Are you still looking for sponsors?
Sponsors can be a bit of a double-edged sword. There's a lot of, sponsorship, and I'll say this as a racer and as a business owner, sponsorship is a partnership, right? So it's a business endeavor between two people. I think that me and a lot of people get the idea that sponsorship is like a donation, right? It's a donation to your race team. And so I'm hesitant about sponsors because of the obligation that comes along with it. Our number one priority is family, right? My family is the most important thing to me. My business comes next because that's what pays for all of this. And so racing is kind of like, third on the list. And when you join in a partnership with somebody in a business venture, there's a lot of obligation that comes along with that. I don't want that to ever be pushed in front of my other two big priorities. And so, we have people that we partner with that understand where we are with our race team and what our priorities are. And we do the best to like I said, to partner with them to promote their product. They really help us with our race team, and those relationships are good. But to say that I'm actively seeking sponsorship, probably not.
Okay. Do you have a race page, a Facebook page that the racing fans can follow you on?
Yes. So there's a Brian Bell Racing page on Facebook. I don't think I have any other social media outlets. I had a YouTube page once upon a time where I used to upload like in-car videos and commentary and things like that, but it's not been active for a while. Life has gotten very busy. And as you probably know, those things take a lot of time and energy to set up and edit and, keep it moving forward. So
ladies and gentlemen, if you get the chance, go follow Brian Bell Racing on Facebook. You follow him and maybe get to know him better. So what is your home racetrack?
Well, I would have said my home racetrack. So the closest one to me would be Riverside Speedway in West Memphis. Now, the track that I grew up racing on would have been I-30 Speedway in just south of Little Rock in Benton, Arkansas. That's kind of where I called home for a long time, but that racetrack closed down a few years ago. So now I have to resort back to say that Riverside is my home track.
What is your most favorite racetrack you've ever raced on?
Ooh, Wheatland, Missouri. That's an easy one.
Okay.
Now that racetrack does not like me. I don't know, actually, because I think I've crashed literally every time I've ever raced there. It just suits me. I like tracks that are I like big tracks that race small, and maybe not everybody will understand what that means, but The track carries a lot of speed, but the way that it races is a lot more like a quarter mile. And so it kind of has a nice blend of having some mile per hour, carrying some speed, but still races like it's a short track. And so, especially in the 410s, it's an enormous amount of fun and it just suits my driving style. I've just been fast every time I've ever been there. I just seem to jive. Now, I don't even think I've ever even won a race there before. But if you just want to talk about your favorite track, that's just it. It's multi-groove. It usually has a top, um, and it just suits me. I don't know why. Now, the track that I've won the most races at is probably Jackson, Mississippi, but it's not at all my favorite racetrack. It's just the one that I happen to win at all the time.
Okay. So, um, Brian, okay. Do you like a wet heavy track, a dry dusty track, or right in the center?
Dry and dusty mostly. It's I don't like the track to be completely gone. Um, I like it to have just a little bit of moisture here and there, like just a little bit on the top, just a little bit on the bottom, but pretty dry and dusty through the middle, where it's still carries a little bit of speed, but it's very technical. Like patchy racetracks are definitely a lot of fun, where there's not consistent moisture, there's just spots here and there, something that really makes the driver have to kind of figure the racetrack out. I don't want something that's obvious where you need to go, right? When you go out on the track, you just go, "Oh, here's the fast lane." I don't like that at all. I like the puzzle and to kind of have to figure it out.
Okay, are you pretty good about reading the racetrack?
Yes, that's probably why I like it that way. And a lot of that goes back to growing up racing at I-30. That was a racetrack that it didn't give you the same thing every single night. And, not only is it oddly shaped or was oddly shaped, it had two inconsistent corners, so they were very different from each other. You never knew where the racetrack was going to be. One night it'd be around the bottom, one time it'd be around the top, and then it would move in the middle of the race. Like it would start out and the bottom would be good, then the bottom would get burned up, and then you'd move. Then all of a sudden somebody would jump up top and start making some ground. So it was a racetrack where you really had to be watching what was going on, not what you were doing in the car, but or the lane you were in, but you had to be watching the whole racetrack. And lap traffic was always an opportunity to get to move around, and it taught me a lot when I went out and went to race other places. It made everywhere else seem, I'm not going to say easy because that's just not respectful, but it made my learning of other racetracks a lot quicker. I could just go to a new racetrack and just be fast right out of the gate because I just learned to think outside the box and do what it is that I felt like was the best thing to do and not necessarily follow everybody else. It was also something that my dad hammered into my head from a very young age is like you can't pass them following them, right? You got to go where they're not. Those were things that he said to me all the time when I first started racing is if you're running second, the guy winning's running the bottom and you're running the bottom, how you going to pass him? You need to go up top. You need to run the middle. You need to try a slider line. You need a dime in the corner. Like you need to do something besides just follow this guy to the checkered flag. So all of those things kind of added together, kind of tailored who I became as a driver and what kind of racetracks I preferred and what I excelled at.
Okay. Do you have any future? What are your do you have any races you're looking forward to racing in coming up?
Right now, I'm not really sure what we took this year off. So I took over the family business at the beginning of this year. And so I knew right out of the gate that this was going to be a transition for our family. It was going to be a transition for me. And so I decided to just take 2025 off from racing, focus on business, right? We talked about that being number two priority. And
Hmm.
so right now we're kind of at the point where it's time to start to decide what the future looks like. We've been running a lot of 410 shows, running a lot with the Outlaws, high limit, hitting some power eye shows here and there. Um, we had just kind of got to the point where we were kind of starting to show some speed, and I've got to figure out if that's what I want to continue to do. That's you're really taking yourself to the gauntlet when you go to these outlaw and high limit, all these big shows all the time, because it can be really, really hard on your confidence, because those guys they're very good at what they do. They're professional teams. They race full time all the time, and that's just not us. We're a family team, and we race for fun, and we're very competitive, and we have the resources to be competitive, but maybe scaling it back to more of a regional team, and maybe stop trying to hit all those big shows all the time is maybe a better way forward for us. But it is a lot of fun to go and compete at that level, especially when you can show some signs of speed. And um, you know I'm not saying that we're a contender or would be a contender, but we've had some moments where we've shown that we belong there, right? And that's a lot of it's very rewarding. Fun's not the right word. It's very rewarding to do that.
Okay. Um, what do you like to do for fun outside the racetrack?
Um, Golf is hit and miss for me. Not a good golfer, but I do enjoy it. We ride dirt bikes a lot. Um, I think dirt bikes are the closest thing that you can get to driving a sprint car. As far as just, I like anything that's fast enough that it can hurt you. And dirt bikes definitely fit the bill for that. So they're a lot of fun. I try to stay off the motocross track these days and stick to the woods like a proper old man. But dirt bikes are a lot of fun for me. And like I said, I've got a lot of family members that play golf, so that's a lot of fun for me to get to go and do that with them. And I got three small kids now, so fun away from the racetrack's pretty limited anyway, because my schedule's pretty full most of the time.
Okay. You have a racing nickname.
Say it again.
Do you have a racing nickname?
Racing nickname. I've had a few here and there. Nothing that's ever really stuck. Somebody tried to stick me with Flying Brian, but that was kind of already, I think, what's his, Brian Rickman, I think, already kind of has that. Um, no, I just never really got nicknames, just I never found anything that really stuck.
Okay. Um, who do y'all have on your racing crew?
So primarily it's just me and my dad, Gary, and then the guy that I mentioned earlier, Steve Estelle from Estelle Truck Repair. He helps us out a lot. So most of the time it's just the three of us. Now, we have other family members that go with us that help with other, aspects of travel, right? There's a lot as far as food and drinks and travel and cleaning and all of that stuff, wives and kids and things like that that go and help out. But as far as the primary work on the race car, it's pretty much down to just us three. Um, my wife accurately accuses me of being a control freak, and I don't like other people touching my race car. So I'm very selective about the people that I allow to work on it, and because I've got to have everything my way, right, wrong, or otherwise. It's just how I am.
Who's your racing hero?
Ooh, racing hero. I don't have one that immediately comes to mind. Um, Probably going back, I like drivers that can drive anything, right? So this goes back to like your Andretti's and your Foyts. Uh, I think Tony Stewart probably fits into that, and Larson. I don't know that I would necessarily say anybody's a hero, as in I aspire to be like them, but as far as gaining my respect, um, those are the kind of people that I like. Is people that were just successful in everything they drove, and I know there's a lot more people than what I listed, but those are the people that get my admiration, yeah, and respect for sure.
So when you strap in your race car, Brian, and get ready to go on the racetrack, what helps get you psyched up and motivated to go out and do this?
Ooh, no, I'm the other way around. So when I get ready to go on the racetrack and get strapped in, I need something to calm me down. So I don't need anybody to give me a big pep talk and start getting me all amped up, because then it's gonna come back on the record. I need When I get ready to go, I need calm. But as far as what motivates you for racing as a whole, I enjoy the challenge of it. The problem solving is probably the thing I like most about it, as far as car setup and trying to make the car setup integrate well with the driver, whether it's me or anybody else. That's the thing that I like about racing, the intricacy, or how tedious it is, maybe is the right way to say it. Sprint cars don't have a lot of parts on them compared to other dirt track cars, but the parts that they do have got to be absolutely perfect. I mean, every single aspect of that car has got to be dialed in completely, and I like that. I like to be in the race shop and have everything just perfectly dialed in and ready to go, and then go to the racetrack and try to dirt track racing. For me, is I like how dynamic that it is. You can race the same racetrack every week, and you don't race the same racetrack every week. Like, every week that you go there, it's kind of got a little different character to it, and a different problem to solve, and a different aspect about it. And so it's very much, you're working on it not only in the shop, but when you get to the racetrack, you've got to continue to refine what you're doing. And that's what I really like about it. That's my favorite part about it, is the sort of problem solving, fly by the seat of your pants almost, um, aspect.
What's the best piece of advice you've gotten as a race car driver?
Best piece of advice I got as a driver was probably advice that I didn't take, which, the classic is, you got to slow down to go faster. That feels like a weird thing to say to a sprint car driver. Um, the best piece of advice that I got, it took me a very long, that I didn't take at all when it happened, but don't worry about what everybody else is doing. Worry about what works for you. And there's no such thing as a secret setup or a magic thing that you can do to make your car fast. You're the magic thing that makes your car fast. And you need to work on what makes the car comfortable for you, and don't worry about what everybody else is doing. And I thought that was the biggest cop out I'd ever heard in my life, from somebody that had the magic recipe, right? I was like, yeah, that's exactly what the guy with the magic recipe would tell me. And then I learned as I got older, I was like, yeah, the things that I do to my race car don't fit the narrative for what people tell you to do to race cars. But it works for me, and I was fortunate to stumble upon it, and it actually turned out to be good advice, even though I didn't want to hear it at the time.
What kind of advice would you give a new race car driver?
Um, Most of your problems are between the seat and the steering wheel. And it's harsh to say, but it's very true. It was very true for me. Most of Almost all of the speed that I found as a driver was when I finally figured out that I was the problem. And it was like a light switch flipped on. I spent my whole early part of my career trying to figure out what was wrong with my race car, that I couldn't win races. And when I finally figured out that it was me, it was like, that was the magic. I mean, it was like overnight. Once I quit worrying so much about what the race car was doing, and I started worrying about what I was doing, it was revolutionary for my career.
All right. Um, Do you have any crazy racing stories you'd like to share with us?
Any crazy racing stories? Well, I kind of already did at the high limit show at Riverside when I tore the fence down and went out of the ballpark and made, I was famous I was like trending on Twitter for 48 hours. That was pretty crazy. I'm not particularly proud of that because I was really on my way to having a good run that night. It was at West Memphis, which was sort of a home track. They had really thrown us a curveball with the racetrack, but it didn't throw me a curveball. I knew exactly what was going to happen, and I just made all the right decisions all night, right up until that moment. and and I just knew what the track was going to do, and I knew what how to adjust my car to make it right for that. But um, I don't know if that's a crazy racing story. I mean, it's crazy to me because it made me really popular, and I've just never been popular on that sort of scale. But crazy racing stories. Well, in the spirit of celebration rather than destruction, we went to Hattiesburg and they had the flip flop. I forgot what they called it, but basically it was twin 25 lap features, and I won both of them that night, which was sort of like
Wow.
a long shot, right? Is so they ran 25 laps and then they inverted the entire field and ran 25 more laps. And we happened to win both of them that night. I don't know how crazy of a racing story that is. I mean, people have crazy racing stories, but I don't. That one's not crazy. It's just kind of, you know, a celebration of success more than that. But no, nothing really crazy. I mean, we're pretty low key team, and we try to be, you know, calm most of the time.
Who have you ever met some big name race car drivers?
Yeah, I mean, being around sprint cars, it's the people that are at the racetrack. You just bump into them. You asked if I'd ever met any big time race car drivers. Is that what you said?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when you're passionate about sprint cars and those people are there, then you kind of bump into Larson and Stewart and you know, I mean Gravel and Sweet and all those guys are at those races, and um, it's it's weird a little bit because you kind of look up to those people and you watch them on TV and you admire their success, and you're excited to see them and possibly meet them, but at the same time you don't want to be that guy, right, that runs up asking for an autograph. Um, so you try to treat them as a fellow competitor and just try to harness your excitement a little bit, I guess. So, yeah, I've got to talk to those guys, and it's it's fun to say that you've, you know, been in the same, driver lineup with some people that you have a lot of respect for and admiration for. And we've parked next to Larson one night, and I was really excited about that. And then it didn't take very long, and I wasn't excited anymore. There was people everywhere all night. We were trying to race and work on our car, and people are standing all around taking pictures. And I said, "Yeah, next time you see Paul parked somewhere, go park somewhere else because there's a lot of attention around that team, and it's they kind of get in the way." I hate to say
Oh
that
yeah.
because the fans for sure make the show happen, but being selfish as a racer, it's like y'all need to give him like an extra pit space on every side for all of the people that want to come see him.
What's your favorite thing about being a race car driver?
It being a race car driver combines multiple things that I think that you can't find anywhere else. So there's the thrill, which is the speed and the danger, and the competitive nature of it. Um, and like we talked about earlier with the problem solving not maybe not as a crew chief, but even as a driver. And so, you can go skydiving and you can get a big thrill, right? There's a lot of speed, there's a lot of danger involved with that, but it's not necessarily it's not really competitive. And somebody may want to push back, but for the spirit of the conversation. And then there's lots of ways to be competitive, but they're not thrilling at the same time. And so one of the unique things that I think gets race car drivers hooked, and you see people they can't get away from it, is those aspects are all tied together in being a race car driver. It's thrilling, it's competitive, it's difficult, right? It's super hard. There's a lot of aspects to it between the chassis and the engine and the setup and the driver and the conditions for the night. It's a very complex, thrilling competition that you just can't find anywhere else in life.
Okay. Um, okay, Brian. Um, who are some of your friends at the racetrack?
Friends, well, so I've been trying to help. My buddy Brad Bowden is a local driver from our area here in Tennessee, and he's just recently stepped up and got a 410 ride. And so, um, I get to spend a lot of time with him talking on the phone, and um, we've gotten to know each other well over the past, gosh, I don't know how many years we've been around each other, but um, he's definitely one of my best friends around the racetrack. Me and him seem to have a lot in common. And then my brother-in-law is the flagman over at West Memphis, Arkansas. And so, those are some of, you just kind of, when you just grow up around, man, I got a lot of friends at the racetrack. I mean, we don't have time to sit here and list all of them, but my closest friends are obviously brother-in-law, family is important to me. We've said that several times. And then with Brad Bowden trying to get him make the transition from 360 to 410, that's something that I had to do 5 years ago. And so I've learned a lot of what not to do, and trying to help him, make that step as well has been a lot of fun to sort of, when you have to explain something to somebody and teach them, it tests you as to whether you really understand the subject matter or not. You can kind of learn it, but you don't know if you really know it until you have to teach it to somebody else. And so it's taught me a lot in that process as well.
So, okay, what are your future goals as a race car driver?
I don't have any particular goals, and I'm 42 years old now, and so most of my racing career is in the past. It's not in the future. And you kind of talk about, like, when the day comes that you're done with racing, what are the what would define your career as successful in your eyes? And I've had that conversation, and I'm not going to say I've met all of my goals, but I think I've exceeded my expectations. Well, depends on when you ask me what my expectations were. But at any rate, um, you know, to win some races, period, is an achievement. There's not a lot of people that win multiple races. And so just to be able to do that at any level, whether it's 305, whether it's 360, 410, yeah, of course, Donnie Schatz wouldn't look at my career and go, oh, wow, success, but I'm not Donnie Schatz. I'm Brian Bell, and, I'm a family team. And, we've, you get a little sentimental about it, but, we've raced as a team for over 20 years. Golly, getting closer to 25 years, that we've raced as a father and son team with, like I said, wives and children's. And even back in the day, I had girlfriends, as I started at a young age. And so, to stand that test of time and to have some success and have some good runs and win some races, I think is, not anything to run around and brag about, but it's certainly not anything to be ashamed of. And in the last couple of years, we've added a lot of speed to our 410 program and had some good opportunities that we squandered away. But, just to have the opportunities is not something that a lot of people get, and Yeah, did I, do I have things that I'd still like to do? For sure. One of my big goals was to finish a top 10 with a national 410 series. And I came pretty close to that a couple of times, but never quite, never quite could just finish the job. And, you know, but, if we never get in a car again, then I don't think there's anything to just necessarily be ashamed about.
Okay. What is your most favorite victory of your racing career?
Favorite victory? Man, there's probably a couple. Um, in a weird way, the one that stands out to me was a NCRA race. I think it was an NCRA race that we won at 81 Speedway. I think that's what, Park City, Kansas, or Wichita. No, that's not Park City. I don't remember where it was. Somebody can correct me on that. But it was one of those when I talked earlier about light bulb moments. We started eighth in the feature, and maybe 10 laps in, we're running like sixth. And even as a driver, I'm like, well, it's just not our night. We're just not much is going to happen here. We'll get what we can and we'll move on. And all of a sudden, things just kind of started coming together. Guys in front of me made mistakes. One guy ran off the end of the racetrack. Another one, you know, just made a bad move in lap traffic. And all of a sudden I'm running second. And I was like, wow. I was like, well, this is pretty good. But I had nothing for the leader. I honestly don't even remember who was leading. I think it was a number 10 car. And I think we saw 5 to go. And so I was pretty settled for a second. And all of a sudden he goes, it was one lane around the bottom in 3 and 4. So I knew I just really didn't have a chance to take a shot at him. And all of a sudden he misses his entry in 3 and 4, slides all the way across the racetrack, and I pass him and I go on to win the race. And so when you say, well, like, okay, well, why is that your favorite win? It's because it taught me that you don't need to force wins. Like, you just need to do what you are doing and you just let the wins come. And I never understood that growing up as a race car driver. I thought that people that won were like superhuman. They were like driving crazy and doing wild stuff that nobody else was doing. I never had a concept of like winning a race as just like, you don't have to do something different from everybody else. You got to do what they're doing better than them. And so when you talk about your favorite victory, that was one that sort of transformed my mental as a driver. And so it's one that stands out. It's one that's very important to me, right? So when you say your favorite, it's like, I don't know if it's my favorite, but it was one that was very important because it taught me to just, you don't have to force wins. Sometimes you just let them come to you.
Okay. What types of racing do you like to watch on TV?
Ooh, very little. I am not much of a spectator when it comes to racing. I am for sure a participant. I like, just being candid, I really don't care for the World of Outlaw format. I think it's pretty dull. Um, I like the high limit format with the invert and then giving the, inverted guy an opportunity to go win the heat race and start on the pole. But most of the racing that I watch on TV is all dirt sprint cars, probably wing sprint cars. Um, and it's mostly high limit, not necessarily because I prefer the drivers there, but I definitely prefer the format. Um, the World of Outlaws, it's just, you put the quick time guy on the pole and it's just, that's just it. It's just kind of over at that point. Um, but I don't watch a lot of it. Surprisingly, I'm much more of a participant than a spectator.
Okay, at this portion of the show, Brian, I like to turn the mic over to my guest. If you have a couple questions you'd like to ask me, you can ask me a couple questions.
Yeah, so we just kind of bumped into each other on social media. Tell me, like, part of the U.S. are you from? What kind of racing do you primarily cover on your show? And
Um, I
what's your
am I
background in racing and your local scene?
I'm up in Northwest Iowa, which is up there
Hmm.
probably probably about 20 minutes from the Minnesota border. So up here where I'm at, we've got dirt track racing all over the place. It's just really crazy up here. Racing wise, on my racing show, I cover anything from pavement to dirt. I cover it from pavement to dirt to anything else, to everything.
Okay. Yeah. So how
And
far are you from Knoxville, Iowa?
I am 4 hours north.
4 hours. I didn't even know Iowa went that far. I thought Knoxville was like as north as it gets because it's like, oh, Knoxville is maybe 9.5 hours from Tennessee, from where we are in Tennessee. So I just kind of felt like it was way up there. I didn't know there was 4 more hours of state above that place.
I'm about 20 to 30 minutes from Jackson Motorplex.
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
Yep, and
Yeah, so that makes sense.
I'm about an hour and a half, 2 hours from Huset's.
Okay. All right. So have you
Yeah,
ever participated as a racer, as a driver or a crew guy or anything like that?
I can honestly say no, I have not. Just been a racing fan for 30
Okay.
years. Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. So you kind of just like you grew up with it. What turn the
Oh yeah.
question around
I
on you? What got you into racing?
when I was like 6 years old, it was like the sport I gravitated towards. It was like, this is my sport. This is the sport I want to go to. This is what I like to watch. Um, my racing hero growing up was Doug Wolfgang. Wolf could do things
Oh,
beyond the
okay.
wheel of a sprint car that was just immeasurable.
Yeah. I was fixing that. I had a follow-up question for that and I forgot what it was. Oh, yeah. So what was it? Have you ever thought about what it was about racing that drew your attention compared to more traditional sports growing up?
Just motors and cars, motors and cars.
Just the speed and the
Oh
intensity
yeah,
of it, just the
yeah.
noise and the
Oh
thrill.
yeah,
Yeah, no, I
oh yeah,
agree with all of that. It's the noise
yeah,
and the thrill and the excitement of it.
yeah,
It doesn't other
yeah.
sports just don't bring that sort of intensity.
And then also growing up, Brian, I was watching NASCAR back in the late '80s, and I followed like Tim Richmond and Davey Allison and Alan
Hmm.
Kowicki. Yeah.
I was a big Davey Allison fan whenever I was a little kid, and
Oh yeah.
um, once he was gone, then I gravitated to Jeff Gordon whenever he came up. Being a dirt track
Yeah.
guy, I was kind of
Yeah.
uh, gravitated towards him, and my parents were big Dale Earnhardt fans, and so I was always the kid that wanted the competition and the rivalry. You know, I wasn't going to cheer for the team that you were cheering for. If we sit down today and we watch a football game and you pick a team that you want to go for, I'm pulling for the opposite team immediately. I'm just that type of person. I'm always going to kind of go against the grain.
Here's a big question for you, Brian. Okay. Throughout the NASCAR years that Davey Allison drove, you think if he would have been alive today, do you think he would have had a couple NASCAR championships?
Oh yeah, for sure, more than a couple. Um, I was young back then. I was born in '83, and so I was probably too young to really evaluate what was really going on. I just knew that I liked him. I liked that he was young. I liked that he was new. I liked that he was kind of disrupting the norm of who was good in NASCAR, right? It's like, here's your veteran winners, and this is what NASCAR, and then all of a sudden, Davey Allison pops into the picture, sort of starts dethroning everybody. I liked that because I think I sort of pictured myself being that way one day, and then I think Jeff Gordon kind of fit that same description for me. Is Dale Earnhardt was just you know he was the the father of NASCAR, and he was NASCAR. And then Jeff Gordon shows up and just immediately starts winning. And I like that they kind of came in and disrupted the tradition, you know. So,
And my tip,
but yes, to answer your question, Davey absolutely would have, um, you know, been, yeah, he would have knocked a
what
few off of some other people's
what
list.
really caught my attention with him is he raced at all cost, which means he raced hurt or whatever it took to win to race.
Yeah, absolutely. There's famous stories of where he raced with a broken arm, and when he had his eye socket broken or whatever kind of craziness. Yeah, absolutely. He was very, very passionate about what he did, and that's definitely something we don't see nowadays in NASCAR. And those guys were gladiators, and that may not, I mean, it may not be that much of an exaggeration, but, um, you know, I don't think anybody gets in a cup car these days and is really as worried. Well, maybe they are worried, but I mean, they're just not is that in at risk as much as those guys were back then. And I think there was a level of respect that those drivers got from the fans because we recognized how courageous they were to do what they did in the face of the dangers that were involved. And there was a level of respect that was attached to that. And whether they deserve it or not, I don't know. But the drivers today, they don't get that respect. I don't think the fans look at them and think, wow, these guys are so courageous. Most of us look at them and we think they're a bunch of crybabies. That's what you hear from
Yeah,
most people is NASCAR's full of a
yeah,
bunch of crybabies. And those guys back in the late 80s, even through the early 90s, which I know goes back further than that, but that's my era of when I grew up.
yeah, oh yeah,
They had their conflict and they had their um, drama, but nobody thought that they were crybabies because
no,
they what they were doing was legitimately dangerous. And I think you see sports as a whole having to try to contend with that. Football kind of has the same problem now. Is when we watched football in the 90s growing up, those guys tried to murder each other. Literally, they wanted to hurt the people on the other team as bad as they could so that they could not play football anymore. And it was like, that
yeah,
is a game that real men play. And I'm
yeah,
not saying that the NFL is not intense now or dangerous or anything like that. But compared to the way it was back then, it's kind of different. And that's where I see the issue that's the problem that NASCAR has, in my opinion, is that the fans don't respect the drivers. And no, I don't think
yeah,
anybody talks about that. Like, I don't admire the drivers in NASCAR. I don't respect them. I'm not saying that they're not talented, or that they don't deserve to be there. I'm not saying any of that. But I remember watching as a kid, and when somebody crashed, like you talked about with Davey Allison, like it was it was serious. Like, he barrel rolled at,
yeah,
was it Talladega or whatever, and broke his arm and
yeah,
broke both of his eye sockets or knocked him out or whatever. And then the next
yeah.
Sunday he's out there racing again with his cast on the steering wheel. Like, that's unbelievable. You want to talk about that's a crazy racing story.
Oh yeah,
And I think that the fans respected those drivers a lot. And I think that went a long way for the sport. And I think we've lost that. What do you
oh
think
yeah,
about
definitely.
that evaluation?
I like that evaluation. What kind of drew me away from NASCAR is the whole stage racing. I don't like it. I think they should have left it alone as far as green flag, caution flag, that type of thing there. When they took that away, that kind of ruined it for me. I was just like, yeah, this is not NASCAR at all anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that they had a bit of a problem to solve. Um, the races were really long, and then the most excited the drivers had kind of gotten to where they would kind of settle in until the last 50 laps, and then they wanted to race, and they kind of needed to figure out a way to break that up. And make it more exciting throughout the race. There's a lot of politics involved with commercials. They needed the airtime in order to sell the advertising. So shortening the race was never going to be a good solution. And but I agree, and certainly the playoff format was absolutely a catastrophe for me. I have contempt for that as a traditional NASCAR fan. The whole playoff thing, I think, is horrific as far as trying to crown a champion. And I get that it mirrors other sports. There's plenty of times the Super Bowl champion wasn't the best team throughout the regular season. That's common in other sports. People get hot at the end of the year, and people that have been good aren't. But we're not football, and we're not basketball. We're NASCAR, and this is the way that we've decided to crown our champion, and it makes the season more, well, the end of the season less interesting, but I think the rest of the season more interesting, right? Because we remember back, was it Jeff Bodine and Dale Earnhardt that had the big throwdown back in the day? They were back and forth with the points. The points were close. Then they got to crashing each other. Like, that was season-long drama, not four-race playoff championship drama. Like, that went on, and not every season was like that. That's a highlight. But, it made the entire season interesting, right? Because the points mattered every week. Now, when Kyle Larson's your favorite driver, if he goes and wins the Daytona 500 and he's locked into the playoffs, what's he supposed to do for the rest of the season?
Yeah, exactly, right.
What do I need to watch for? My favorite driver's in the playoffs. I'll tune in August. I'll see y'all later.
Yeah.
What difference does it make to me at this point? But, whenever he's got to compete for points all year long, you want to keep up with how he's doing. You want to see where he's at in the points and how he runs week in and week out. That's my opinion. Everybody's got opinions, and most of them are not any good, but,
So is there anybody you'd like to thank you for helping you get this racing far with your racing career?
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of people. My whole family is the biggest contributor to all of that. My wife, Lacey, and my dad, Gary, and, Steve that helps us with the car, and, Regina, my stepmom has been around since, 94 and has seen me run most every lap I've ever raced in a sprint car. And, that list just goes on and on. Speaking of somebody I'd like to thank, Brody, should we thank you? You want to be on the podcast? You want to come say hi? No. Can you say hi to everybody on YouTube? No. Okay. But yeah, so just being, I'm just thankful that for the whole family, right? That it's a family affair. It's just something that we've always done together, and something that I've really enjoyed. We've had partners and people along the way that have helped us, but mostly it's just the family, man. And anybody that's been around racing at a local or regional level, it usually mostly is a family affair, and so they can appreciate that.
Well, Brian, I would like to thank you for being on our racing show tonight. Talk to us about your racing career. Getting to know you a little bit better. I will have you step out, and I will give you a call in a little bit to thank you.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I enjoyed being here. I'm never shy about sharing my experiences and opinions, so this kind of stuff is fun to me.
Oh, yes. Well, thank you, Brian.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you soon.
Yep. Talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.
Bye. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Brian Bell on our racing show tonight, talking to us about his racing career. Go hit him up on his racing page on Facebook that he mentioned. But if you'd like to sponsor our racing show or be on our racing show, feel free to call us or text us at 712-209-713, or you can email us at jjnolan151